As chair of the House Ways and Means Committee, I find that due to the state of emergency declared by the governor as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, and in accordance with House Rule 67 and the governor's emergency order number 12, pursuant to Executive Order 2020-04, this public body is authorized to meet electronically. This is a work session on remaining bills of Ways and Means Committee. Executive session on pending legislations may also be held. Please note that there is no physical location for members of the public to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting. However, in accordance with the emergency order, I am confirming that all members of the committee and select legislative staff have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting through the Zoom electronic meeting platform, and the public has access to contemporaneously listen and, if necessary, participate in this meeting by the Zoom platform or by telephone. All necessary access information has been made available in the calendar and through the electronic calendar on the General Court website. The notice for this meeting complies with House Rules and RSA 91A. Anyone who has a problem accessing the meeting should call 271-3600 or email hcs@lake.state.nh.us. In the event is unable to access the meeting will be adjourned and rescheduled. I want to introduce the staff that are on the meeting assisting us. Jennifer Floor, committee researcher. Please note that all votes that are taken during this meeting shall be done by a roll call vote. Let's start by the meeting by taking a roll call attendance. When each member states their presence, please also state whether there is anyone in the room with you during the meeting, which is required under the right to know law. So Representative Bernstein, would you take the roll?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Today is March 2nd, 2021. It's 9 a.m. Let's begin roll call with Representative Patrick Abrami.
Here in my home in Stratham, my wife's in the house.
Subbing for Mary Griffin is Representative Wayne McDonald.
Good morning. I'm here and I'm home alone.
Representative Jordan O'Leary.
Yes, I'll be in my car taking my wife to the doctor's office, but she'll be with me during that time.
Representative Russ Ober.
Here in Hudson at my home with 6 cats.
Representative Fred Doucette.
Sorry about that. Good morning. My home office, Salem alone.
Good morning. Representative Burstein, that's me, is in his home office in Nottingham, New Hampshire by himself. Representative Elliott.
I'm here in my apartment and my wife is in some other room.
Representative Janigian.
I'm home in Salem and my wife is somewhere in the house.
Representative Nunes.
Thank you, Representative Burstein. I'm home alone in Pelham.
Representative Baxter.
Thank you, Representative. I'm home alone.
Representative Spilsbury.
Good morning. Home in Charlestown. My wife is elsewhere in the house.
Representative Tudor.
I'm home in Northwood alone.
Representative Susan Almy.
I'm in Lebanon alone.
Representative Ames.
I'm here in Jaffrey in my home office alone.
Representative Southworth.
Here in Dover alone.
Representative Malloy.
Here alone in Greenland.
Representative Thomas Schamberg.
I'm here in Wilmot in my office and my wife is in her office.
Representative Tucker.
I'm here alone in Randolph.
Representative Gomarlo.
Alone in Swansea.
Representative Loftman. Representative Tom Loftman. Representative Gorg.
I am present and alone.
Representative Hacken Phillips.
Good morning. I'm present for my office alone in Concord.
Representative James Murphy.
Good morning. I'm here in Hanover in my home office alone.
Representative Norman Major.
Good morning. I'm in my home and my wife is in the other room.
Mr. Chair, there are 23 members present. 1 is absent.
Thank you, Representative. Okay. Today, we're going to deal with the remaining bills that we've had public hearings on, which is 12 bills. We hope to get most of them out. We also have 5 other bills, that second committee bills, which I'll schedule for Wednesday, March 10th, because Tuesday, March 9th is election day, so everybody will be out that day. The 12 bills that we have left that we're going to discuss today is, we can break them up into 2 groups. One that has to do with the DRA type bills, which is House Bill 10, 15, 210, 252, 504, and 568. And the non-DRA ones, which are CACR 1, 2, House Bill 346, 400, 621, and 626. We're going to start by taking one from the non-DRA one, which is House Bill 626. It has to do with gambling. And why we're doing that is Charlie McIntyre should be in attendance, will be available to answer questions on that.
I'm letting him in.
Thank you. And then after we do House Bill 626, then we're going to go into the DRA related ones, because we have members from the DRA which are in attendance and will be able to answer questions from the committee. But when we do the DRA ones, House Bill 10, I'm going to hold that. We may end up dealing with that tomorrow. So we will start with House Bill 626, which is a gaming bill. House Bill 626, an act relative to historic horse racing. Representative Braun is the prime sponsor on that. Representative Doucette, a member of the committee, is also on that bill, and Representative Gamaro and a number of others. So the discussion is starting, is up to you. So I don't see any hands. Who wants to start the discussion on House Bill 626?
Susan has her hand up.
Representative Almy has a question. Representative Almy.
Thank you. I want to understand why this bill and this new initiative in fairly major gambling does not allow the local option that is provided in Keno and provided in sports betting. Last term, when this came through, as chair, I was pretty limited in asking things, and it was a total surprise to me when I was told that we don't do this. Well, we did in the last 2 years before that do this, and I would because it has been put within charitable gaming statute, but is also linked to the racing statute. It goes, it's taking the most freedoms for this activity individual freedoms on from the charitable gaming. But it is actually an activity which would normally be considered to be in a totally new chapter all by itself, because it is quite a departure from everything that has been considered charitable gaming in the past. And I would like to know whether people would be willing to support putting a local option for this activity. Thank you.
Who would want to respond to Representative Allamy's question?
Can I respond, Mr. Chair?
Representative Abrami.
As you know, charitable gaming has been around for almost a decade and a half. There's never, ever been a local option having to do with charitable gaming. These organizations have sprouted up. There's 16 of them now throughout the state, playing variety of games, from craps to roulette to poker, you name it. And not once has a community ever voted on any of those, whether it be poker or whether it be roulette or whatever. Now, Keno, and I was involved in the Keno. And actually, I insisted on an opt-in up for that way back when, because it was a different kind of facility. It was a restaurant that poured liquor. And that was different enough that we said we should have an opt-in by the community for Keno. And that has gone on and that passed, and many communities have since voted in the local option for that. But all we're doing with this bill, back to historic racing, is adding another game to the portfolio of games that already exist. So within charitable gaming. And that's why I do not think it's appropriate to have this option now.
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair.
Representative Ames.
Yeah, I'd like to speak on that question in response to what Representative Abrami just said. I think there's a difference here. The horse racing machines that we're talking about bring a scale to charitable gaming that's unprecedented. We're talking about, on average, according to the fiscal note, of course, is a guesstimate, but they used 1,000 machines statewide as a basis for the estimate. You divide that by 16, and you get about 60 odd machines per site, but it's going to be uneven. There are going to be some with much more, many more, and some with less. That's a big hit for a local community. And it's a question of that should be answered. It's the placement of a facility with those machines in it is a matter that should be, I think, put to the local voters to see whether they agree that it's okay. It's very different from Keno, very different from anything else that we've talked about. And for Keno now, or sports betting, we have local options. Why not for this? I don't understand it. And we're talking, by the way, in terms of scale, I mentioned 1,000 machines. The fiscal note also points out that if that's the number of machines, we're going to have $550 million flowing through those 16 locations. That's a lot of money. It's a lot of money. And so one more difference between this proposal and everything else that's involved with related to charitable gaming.
Yeah, respond to that, Mr. Chair?
Could I respond first? I did have my hand up.
Fine with me.
Okay, Representative Alamy, followed by Representative Romney.
Thank you. We have been very careful over the years in charitable gaming. They have come to us with requests for machines. The major difference of a machine from the poker and the roulette and the craps is that there is only an interaction between an individual person and a machine, not the social component that is found in what used to be charitable gaming. And when we have had machine requests, when we have granted them, we have been very careful to circumscribe them enough, actually, that the people running large gambling establishments keep coming back to say, let us get rid of these circumstances. And we have said no, because they were meant to just be a convenience, not something that would draw someone in to spend all of their time in front of that machine. These are a class of machine which is set up specifically to keep someone on the machine as long as possible and gambling as quickly as possible. That creates more problems with people who lose all of their money. They are not a very large percentage of the people that use those machines, because most people do not addict. But the closer you live to these places, the more you addict, the more likely you addict. And there are communities where this is considered to be not so much a problem. One, it's in the culture. Two, it's serving a very, very large area of people. There are also communities that now have charitable gaming where this is a huge problem, because, as in my community, the poker room has been put in the middle of the subsidized housing and the housing for people who are recovering from substance abuse, the housing of elder people who don't have much to do in their lives and don't have enough money probably to last for very long without ending up in the county nursing home. And so communities need to have some kind of say in this major difference from what we have been doing so far. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Alamy. Representative Romney.
Okay, three things. First, let's not forget that in many of these establishments already have Lucky 7 machines, which are mechanical devices that take bets just like these. And some of them have 30, 35 of these machines in a facility. So this is not the first time there's mechanical devices. The other thing that we neglect to talk about, we haven't talked about, was that many communities use ordinances when it comes to regulating their charitable gaming. Salem's a great example of that. They indicate where in the community they wanted to see charitable gaming. So there are mechanisms that exist to monitor or to place within a community charitable gaming that already a town can avail themselves to. Now, as far as the machines themselves, in talking to Charlie McIntyre over the years, he always says the easiest thing for him to maintain are machines. It's harder for him to maintain and monitor poker, to monitor the craps table, because there's human beings involved interacting, not just the machine. And maybe perhaps Mr. Chair, perhaps we can have Charlie just chime in a second on that, the whole issue of his ability to oversee this and comparing it to other games of chance that he has to maintain and monitor. Would that be okay?
Yes. Charlie McIntyre.
Yes. Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Hi, Charlie McIntyre. I'm at my office in Concord. With me is our Chief Compliance Officer, John Conforti, who's been before the committee as well.
You heard what the discussion was relative to the machines?
I did. One of the things, the technology exists certainly to monitor the machines in real time, similar to what we do with lottery terminals. And they are from the purposes of regulatory standpoint, the easiest to maintain. And one of the things I wanted to comment on that was said earlier is, while the fiscal note contains a very large number, that's not the amount of money that goes into the machine. That's the amount of money of play that exists. And what I mean by that is, if you put $10 into a terminal, ultimately you're going to play probably somewhere between $40, $50 worth of play, $60 worth of play, 70, a significant number above the amount you put in before that money is exhausted. So really what we generally concern ourselves with is what's left at the end of the day that remains in the machine. And similarly, I'll use the analogy to sports betting. Sports betting will do, probably $600 million full year in sports betting activity. But it's not like $600 million is passed through our machines. It's really, the same $50 has gone back and forth across people who bet. And it's, I bet $50 and Representative Major bet $50 in the same game on opposite sides. $50 has gone from one account to another account. So similarly, the machines themselves don't get all of that money. It's not like someone puts in hundreds of millions of dollars. They're putting in millions, there's no question. But it's, if you're playing, let's say depositing $10, you bet a quarter, you win 10 cents back. You bet a quarter again, you win 50 cents back. You lose 3 times, you lose 75 cents. So it's this constant play that makes it a much larger number than it sounds like. And so for our purposes, we're giant fans of technology, as you can imagine. They're far more easy to monitor. To answer your question, Mr. Chairman.
Well, thank you, Charlie. Are there any other questions about Charlie's?
Yes, I do.
Representative Ames?
Yeah. Related to what you just said, I'm going to put together several questions, and I think it's easier for you to answer these. But related to your point about the actual amount being less than that $545 million that I had mentioned, fair enough, but it is still a lot of money, and I think you said that. And I'd like you to speak to the way in which you ensure that money is managed appropriately. It's more than just the machine. There's a lot of money that is, maybe it's our credit cards being used. I don't know. Maybe you could go into all of that question of how the money gets played. And then related to this money question is your fiscal note. And in the fiscal note, you used 1,000 machines as your takeoff point. That's the same, and it's basically the same note as you did 2 years ago for the bill that was then put forward on the same issue. And this year we've got a bill that has a bet limit of $25. At that time, the bet limit was $10. I don't see any adjustment for that in your fiscal note. Is that because there doesn't need to be? And if so, why? So maybe you could speak to that too. I think that's the main things right now.
Charlie? You're muted, Charlie. Charlie,
Yep, sorry, I shouldn't speak too well at technology when I do that, right? I'll answer in reverse order if I can, Representative Ames. As to the bet limit, 10 or 25, to me, the difference in terms of handle would be immaterial. I wouldn't see a large difference in the amount of wagering activity. Not a lot of folks will have a single bet above $10 on a machine like this. Generally, what you have is you have folks who go with a budget, a set amount of money, and look to play for a long time. And so it's unlikely you would have a large amount of play at $25 or even above 10. So that's why the fiscal note doesn't change. And the number of machines, honestly, I don't know the answer to that. Based on the number of facilities and the marketplace, it would determine how many machines there are, what type, and how they're configured. Handle, no, to your point, well, I say that the amount of money is not 547. There's no question that in our fiscal note and the amount of money that actually goes through these facilities is $65 million. So I don't discount the amount of money in question. It's a large sum of money. It's just not the big number, which can sometimes get inflated or it can be scary because it's such a large number. And we certainly, over the last several years, as we incorporated racing and charitable gambling, we increased our financial audit capacity significantly. For the first time in our history, over the last 2 years, we've audited every room under our umbrella. We regularly audit charities to make sure the revenues are correct. And I think I've said before, when we first absorbed this agency, we sent out 500 subpoenas to everybody involved in the process to make sure everybody's numbers were correct. And by and large, we found that the numbers were correct, which was an assumption that I didn't make originally, but certainly came to after taking over this agency. And we will beef up our regulatory staff as well. There's a companion bill filed by Representative Brahmi related to Compliance and Investigation Division, which you folks voted ought to pass, which I think got transferred to ED&A, but certainly looking to beef up our investigatory functions and powers of the division. And we do have open positions currently that are funded, not filled, that we will also add to that division. I know John Conforti wants to add any question. Eddie said.
So just to Representative Ames' point, with an increase in money coming into these facilities, we would also increase our oversight of anti-money laundering. So a lot of these rooms would be subject to federal requirements regarding suspicious activity reporting and reporting any large tier transactions. And we are monitoring that. In some of the rooms where we've had sports betting, we have had the rooms implement federally compliant anti-money laundering policies. So on the front end in the room itself, we're making sure that the cash handling and cash reporting activities are being done to federal legal standards. And then as Charlie said, on the back end, we have a robust audit program that we've built out over the last couple of years to be able to go into every facility every few months to take a look at their books, to take a look at their financial reporting, and to do a pretty focused audit to make sure that that the financial reporting, both to the state and then also making sure that the charities are getting their fair cut based on the statutory percentage. And obviously we would extend that out to the historic horse racing activities as well. As Charlie said, as we get more activity, we're going to need more bodies, but we have the programs and procedures in place right now based on our games of chance as they exist.
Follow up?
Follow up, Representative Ames.
I appreciate those answers. That's good information, and thank you. You're doing good work there. So two questions. One is on the bet limit. you said it really wouldn't make that much difference. And my question is why raise the bet limit to $25 if most bettors will bet below $10? And then the other question is machines, and you're using 1,000 machines just as a way of doing this analysis. I understand that, but I would expect that there would be pretty significant difference in the number of machines across the 16 locations. I've got, I think, 1,000 by 16 divided by 16 is about 60, but that's just an average. So what's your best guesstimate of how this is going to play out in terms of the spread of the machines across the state?
Certainly. If I recall correctly, there's no magic to the $25. I think it was meant to comport with the largest ticket that the lottery can sell. So under the RSAs related to the lottery, the largest ticket size is $25, and it comports with that. So I think that's the answer to that question, Representative Ames. There was no magic to it. It certainly wasn't our idea. It was just, I think somebody asked, what's the biggest bet the lottery can place? And it's $25. As for the map of machines, I would certainly, if I was building it out and if the marketplace was speaking correctly, I would assume the vast majority of machines would be in Rocky and Hillsborough County, and locations down that way, and as close to population centers as could possibly be imagined. And so the plurality of the machines to the majority would likely be near or at the NAS border, and the facilities there, only because the marketplace can handle them there, versus locations where there's not much population. So the distribution would not be 16 dividing 1,000. It would be something different than that.
Okay. Representative Gorg.
Thank you. I have a question probably for Representative Almy. I'm curious if there's a way to change the percentages that go to our nonprofits. If this is truly charitable gaming, I'm a little concerned just from someone who used to run a nonprofit that the numbers just seem really small. And I didn't know if there was a way to change it just seems like a bad deal for the state as well, but is there a way to kind of change those numbers?
And that was a question to Representative Almy?
Yes, please. I think, or maybe Mr. McIntyre, but.
Representative Almy, you want to respond first and then?
No, I'm the last person to ask that too. I think it would be to Mr. McIntyre about on why we have to give so much money to the operators for this. But I wanted to follow up later as soon as I can with Mr. McIntyre. Thank you.
Charlie, do you want to respond to Representative Fox?
Certainly. Because these machines are not what you would call video lottery terminals, or which is called in the vernacular slot machines, they're not as attractive as they would be if they were. So the percentage that the operator gets is to sort of reimburse them for all the cost of operations, the facility itself, the labor costs, our compliance requirements, which will be onerous. The machines themselves also are on a rev share. So a machine manufacturer will take a percentage of the amount that the machine gets to reimburse it into profit as a going business. I mean, that's the reason. It's these, $65 million divided by 16 facilities. It's not obviously a one for one, but that's not a large number. It's not a large revenue for a business that has to maintain a significant amount of requirements. So that's the where it sits. If these were VLTs, the number would be much, much higher, but they're not. And so that's where it is.
Representative Malloy.
Thank you for taking my question. I want to follow up with what Representative Gorg pointed out about that percentage. And I also, so that's, she brought that up. That's out on the table now. And I would like to see that percentage increased. It goes to the nonprofits and to the state. But my other question, if I may, or my comment is, in an effort to put in full transparency, I agree with Representative Almay that we should think about a local option here, because I think if local voters knew what that percentage was and how much was not going to the nonprofits and the state, they may have a different opinion about whether or not they want to expand this, because it looks very tiny and is not a number that I would want to have to defend. Thank you.
I think you'll find, Mr. Chair, I think you'll find if you dig down into the numbers, that the number is actually a fair number. And remember, what we passed this body passed a commission or a joint committee with the Senate where we can address all of these issues, because this is, again, broader than just charitable gaming, than historic racing machines. If you're going to bring this type of topic up, I think you're going to bring it up for all of charitable gaming. Why aren't the charities getting more in general? It's a broader question than just historic racing machines. And again, that could be addressed. But I think what you need to do is do an honest assessment of what's a reasonable margin for someone in business doing this. And I've looked at it different ways, and it seems like this is a reasonable margin for the risk that they're taking to put this out there. And again, remember, we're talking about adding $5.7 million to the charities, $12 million to the Education Trust Fund, and $821,000 to the Problem Gambling Fund through just this action of historic racing. So, it looks on paper, you look at it, you go, wow. Yeah, but they got to turn the lights on. They got to turn the heat on. They got to buy the machines. They got to do all this other stuff that is required in running a business. So I'll leave it at that. And I'm not, believe me, if I personally thought that these facilities were making too much, I wouldn't be the prime sponsor of this bill. Thank you.
Okay. Before we go to Representative Almy again, actually, Representative Doucette, but before that, the point I want to make, answer Representative Gorg and Representative Malloy's question, is that we had slews and slews of correspondence from various charities in support of this bill. But I don't remember one charity that was against this bill. And the charities, why are they out supporting this bill if they think they're getting too little? So that's the question. Representative Doucette.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to this point, I happen to have the numbers in front of me. As an example, out of a $100 wage made, $92 of that is paid back to the player. $2.50 is paid out to the state and the charity. $2.50 is paid to the machine manufacturer, software licensing, etc. Operating expenses of $2.40, and we don't have to go through that list, but the end result is 60 cents or 0.6% out of that $100 bet goes to the operators. and 2.5% go to both the charity and the state. So it's in line with other charitable gaming.
Okay, somebody new. Representative Elmy, you have your hands up.
I do. I'm not new at this point, though I am still trying to get back to Mr. McIntyre.
Okay, you have a question for Representative, for Mr. McIntyre. Why don't you state your question?
Thank you. You, as far as I can tell, are only auditing for whether the money that is earned, extracted from the users of the charitable gaming facility is correctly accounted for and provided to the places it's supposed to be provided to. What I am concerned with is the people that become problem gamblers because they are in places that have one of these facilities. It is a very long way to a slot machine, which is in Massachusetts. On the research that was done by a person that ran charitable, that was funded by the major casinos, that was in Massachusetts for about 10 years before he moved to Texas, showed that the people that were near small casinos in Rhode Island were spending small amounts of money in those casinos and going on weekends because they'd gotten very addicted to this. They were going over to Connecticut. So that is a thing. Now, what I am most interested in is how we can identify and try to help the people that come to these facilities because they are lonely, because they are addictive personalities in the first place, and keep coming back and staying in front of that machine for hours, because you have to accept that when you have AutoCAD on a machine, almost everybody is going to push the AutoCAD button and treat it as a slow version and not very slow version of a slot machine. It is a lot faster version than some things we saw in the past. And what I want to ask Mr. McIntyre is, as I understand it, these machines are controlled from the software and machine distributor. They are not controlled elsewhere. How can you try to put in controls that will identify people that are spending hours at one of these machines, so that your enforcement arm and the problem gambling fund are capable of dealing with? For any gambling, there is a certain amount of addiction, but for machines, there is much more. So how can you find out who these people are and see if they are willing to ban themselves, see if they are willing yet to accept treatment?
Are you through?
Yes, thank you.
Charlie?
Certainly, Representative Almy, to your point, certainly we can increase the amount of display for responsible gaming in each facility. We can mandate training for the staff in questions of the 16 facilities. Adding controls to a machine is kind of tricky, only because you're not gonna know if it's a new player or an old player on a machine. The machines themselves are obviously tested, so you know what you're getting in terms of the math behind it. One of the provisions is certification by a testing lab. So the machines themselves are operating within the specifications we dictate. So there's no issue there. In terms of help, all we can do is sort of offer multiple aspects and multiple communication channels when it comes to folks who want help. One of the nice things about obviously our other platforms is they have exclusion lists that are, because of the technology. I mean, certainly we could offer an exclusion list for each facility as well, and we could offer that statewide. It does bring up enforcement difficulties, as you can imagine, because it's hard, absent very expensive technology, it's hard to manage that level of exclusion. And even those, I will tell you, somebody who's dealt in this world for a long time, it's when people take personal responsibility that it really takes hold, not the government itself dictating terms.
Could I have a follow-up?
Can you limit it to about 2 minutes?
Yes, yes. If I can. On first, personal responsibility is negated by addiction. That is the problem with addiction. On second, on the major casinos have ways of tracking all of this, but it is just, as you said, pretty impossible to track it in these small, tiny, mini places. And possibly the Brook could track it. It's big enough to be a casino. But this is something that if nothing can be done about this, it's going to overwhelm some of our communities. Thank you.
Charlie, you want to respond?
I don't think that was the form of question, Mr. Chairman. I think it was more forms of a statement. So thank you.
Okay. Representative York, you have your hands up.
I did. Yes, I had a follow-up. I'm so sorry. First of all, thank you, Representative Doucette, for going through the breakdown. It was really nice that actually Representative Abrami sent us all that breakdown. So I thank you for repeating it, though. And to the chair, although, yes, everybody, we got a lot of responses from charitable organizations, it doesn't hurt to ask for more. So I'm just going to throw that out there. Because nonprofits is where my heart is. So if I can get more money for them, I'm going to ask. But I do have a question for my follow-up to Mr. McIntyre is what the operator share and the amount that the state gets and the operator and costs and all of that stuff, is that on par with other states that do this historic racing?
Representative, thank you for the question. And certainly I've been remiss in not telling the committee that based on the prior filing of the bill related to study of charitable gambling, we commissioned a study through UNH to research this. And so we sent out a study to all of our charities in question, asking them a series of questions related to charitable gambling. That came from us. It didn't come from anybody, and we're paying for it ourselves. So that how satisfied they are they getting what they want, all these things. And so as soon as we get the results of that, we'll share them with everybody because we're giant research nuts here. So if there's an issue, we want to know about it beforehand. So I wanted to share that because I completely forgot about it. Second, also, yes, the answer is this rate of, we'll call it a tax rate, 25%. It's really just a rev share, is consistent with other states. Kentucky, Wyoming, Virginia are the three that I would point to, and they're approximately the same.
Thank you.
Okay, Representative Gamalo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner McIntyre, it appears that the figures quoted by Representative Doucette coming from the colorful sheet we got, this one, says 92% goes back to the players, but the fiscal note it looks like 88% goes back to the players. Am I looking at this wrong?
So for our purposes, we work off of the lowest common denominator, and the bill says that a minimum of 88% has to go back in prizes. So for us, we use the minimum, which is 88%, and the 12%, the remainder. Prize payout is one of those things that we live and breathe by. And so depending upon how the machines are manufactured and placed in the facilities, the prize payout will vary. I wouldn't imagine that much. It'll vary probably between 89 and 91%. And so our take will be off of that. I think it was just done for ease of math, Representative, to that point. By the same token, I want to leave this point very clear is because there's less of a margin does not mean there's less profit. Quite the opposite. Lower margin in gambling generally yields to higher profit. And I'll make that case for the lottery side. Our margin has gone down by, I think, 5% over the last 10 years, and our profitability has gone up by about 30 million. So just because the margin is different, don't look to a one-for-one overlap comparison. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, it does. May I have a follow-up, please?
Follow up.
So it depends on the way the machines are manufactured as to what the odds will be?
Correct. It's really more because it's a pari-mutuel product. It's more of the sort of the races that win and and how the machine lays out the specific odds and the specific payout for specific races.
Okay, thank you very much.
And it will vary too, Representative Garland. It'll vary by which horses come through, which dates and which times, but it'll be within a very small window.
Okay. Representative Murphy.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is to Commissioner. Just a simple question. Do you know regionally or nationally how many people with this historic betting use the auto cap function?
I don't know the answer to that. Apologize. I wouldn't know.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Elmy.
Thank you. I wanted to address the charity area. First, they are, this is free money for the charities. Second, a huge percentage of those came out of the city of Nashua. And third, I explored this a little in my community. There were several people that I approached who said that they do not want to see this in our community. I approached the Rotary Club because they had actually signed up with the poker club. And I was told we spent an enormous amount of time arguing about whether we wanted to get money from poker, even though a number of them play poker. Most of them play poker in friendly games. And the idea that it would turn into a machine operation is one that is highly unacceptable in our area. I don't say that that's true of Nashua. They're very close to the Massachusetts border. Massachusetts bets more money per capita than I think anywhere in the country. So they're interested in these things. But in my area, no. Thank you.
Is that a form of a question or just a statement?
No, it's a continuing question about why we cannot have local options on this. Thank you.
Okay. Representative Ames.
Yeah, I got it. So I guess I've got one question for Mr. McIntyre, but then I've got a couple of questions for Representative Abrami, but I don't know how you want to handle that. The question to Mr. McIntyre is relates to the selection of charities to participate in dates with the operators. And my question is whether what your rules provide with what boundary lines or systems you have put in place through rule for the selection of the charities that are going to benefit from this charitable gambling, or is this all delegated to operators?
The lottery takes no part in choosing charities. It's left to the operator, Representative Ames.
Okay.
Now you have a question for Representative Romney? You have a question for Representative Romney?
Oh, yes, I do. Yeah. Okay. So my question to you, Representative Brahmi, is why there's a couple of questions here. Why you chose to put forward in this bill a bet limit of $25 rather than $10, and then why you chose not to include in this bill the limitation that was in the bill as sent forward with amendment by the Ways and Means Committee 2 years ago, limiting the use of the auto cap feature, and then finally whether you think it's okay that individuals aged 18 to 21 gamble on these machines, where we require an age of 21 for sports betting, and I think Keno.
That's 3 questions. Representative Romney.
Remember all the questions, but
Is the $25 versus $10?
the $25, I was told it didn't matter really, because most people are only going to bet $2 or $3 on this.
So why increase?
So I was also told that there's a certain vendor that has a trifecta kind of a bet that could be a larger bet. So I said, fine, we'll put 25. But I was told in other locales, no one bets $25 on as Mr. McIntyre mentioned, people don't want to make one bet and then lose all their money and walk away. They want to play for the enjoyment of playing. So that's that one.
The second question is auto cap.
Be honest with you, I totally forgot about the amendment that was there from last year. I guess it was last year. But you got to remember about that amendment was that even though we had an amendment that said there'd be no auto cap, there was still going to be an auto cap, basically a manual auto cap, that people were going to pick they were going to choose an automatic amount without the machine doing it for them. So to me, because I even went along with that way back when, but I'll be honest with you, I totally forgot about that when I refiled the bill. So, and that just came up recently. And I think your comments to me about that.
The last question was age 18.
Well, look, I mean, all charitable gaming is 18 right now. All of lottery, for the most part, you buy a scratch ticket, you could buy a $25 scratch ticket and be 18. I mean, and I can go to the Brook, and I can place a bet at Aqueduct simulcast and be 18 years old and do that. So and that's simulcast racing. So, you know, we can address the larger issue of the age of gambling in the state if you'd like, but I don't want to do it within this bill. This bill is working within the parameters of what already exists. that we've recognized in this state since the 1930s that an 18-year-old can place a bet on a horse race. And that's the case today, was the case 10 years ago, was the case 20 years ago. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
All set, Representative Ames?
Well, actually, a follow-up question.
Follow.
Would you, this is to Representative Abrami again, would you support changing back to a $10 bet limit and putting in the amendment that we all voted for 2 years ago regarding auto cap?
I'm not, because I want to be consistent with the Senate. It's going to be hard enough to pass this on the floor as is. And there's a similar bill in the Senate that if we pass it, if it does pass the House, I don't want to have to go through an amendment process with them and having to go back to the floor a second time with the bill. So, no, I'm not willing. No. I mean, you can do the amendment if you like, but I would recommend that we don't vote for that amendment.
Okay, Representative Romney, you had your hand up for speaking.
Oh, that was just to say, can we move the question?
Okay, that requires.
I thought this was a working session.
Yes, right. We're not, nobody has made a motion. And I have amendments to offer.
No, I understand. And I appreciate your amendments. Are we done with the work session, I guess? And I'd like to move to executive session and vote this bill up or down.
We need a vote in order to move to the work, to executive session. Who seconds Romney?
I do, Mr. Chair.
Representative Doucette. So we need to take a vote to move to. Do I need to take a vote for executive session?
No.
I can. I think we've had a lot of discussion on this. You can either vote yes or no, and from the motion, Representative Doucette.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move ought to pass on HB 626.
Seconded by?
I'll second it.
Motions ought to pass by Representative Doucette. Seconded by Representative Romney. So is there any further questions or comments on the motion of ought to pass?
Mr. Chairman?
Representative Romney. I mean, Almy. Sorry.
Thank you. I want to move, oh dear, the amendment that I sent everyone on local option. I'm going to have to.
5447.
5447, thank you. And I don't think I need to speak to my emotion.
Okay, Representative Almy wants to move amendment.
I think it's just 447, isn't it?
No, it's 547.
Oh, 547.
547H. And seconded by?
I'll second.
Who's that? Representative Ames?
Southworth.
Southworth, okay. Any further discussion on the amendment 547H?
My hand's up.
Representative Southworth.
Yes, I appreciate the discussion. Really, most of my questions were covered, but I just want to say for my city of Dover, they really appreciate being given the local option. Thank you.
Okay. Further questions or comments? Representative Elliott. Representative Elliott, you're muted. Representative Elliott, you're muted.
Okay. There's already a motion on the floor, O2P, and now there's an amendment on the floor. Can you have, which one gets preference, the amendment or the original motion of OTP?
We need to take care of the amendment before we go back to OTP. Any further questions or comments? Representative Romney. You're muted, Pat. Pat, you're muted.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to respectfully vote no on this amendment.
Any further questions or comments on the amendment? Your hand is still up, Representative Romney.
Oh, no, that was for my comment. Okay, it's coming down.
All right, since there's no more hands up, then I'm gonna have to call the roll on the amendment. Representative Bernstein.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is Amendment 0547H on House Bill 626. Let's begin the roll call vote with Representative Abrami.
No.
Representative McDonald.
No.
Representative O'Leary.
No.
Ober.
No.
The clerk votes no. Doucette.
No.
Elliott.
No.
Janigian.
No.
Nunes.
No.
Baxter.
No.
Spilsbury.
No.
Tudor.
No.
Almy.
Susan, you're muted.
Yes.
Ames.
Yes.
Southworth.
Yes.
Malloy.
Yes.
Schaumburg.
Representative Shamberg votes yes.
Tucker. You're muted, Representative Tucker.
No.
Representative Gomarlo.
Yes.
Representative Loftman is not voting. Representative Gorg.
Yes.
Representative Hacken Phillips stepped out, so she's not voting. Representative Murphy.
Yes.
Chairman Major.
No.
Mr. Chair, the amendment fails by a vote of 14 no votes, 8 yes votes.
The vote being 14-8, the motion fails. Are there any other motions?
Mr. Chair,
Representative Almy?
I move amendment 548H and I wish to speak briefly to my motion.
Representative Almy moves amendment 548H and seconded by
Representative Shamberg.
Shamberg. You may speak, Representative Almy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, this amendment puts into law a registry of the individuals who asked to be banned from their location. This was mentioned when I asked him by Mr. McIntyre as something that could be done. And I think in this case, it is extremely important for the community and for the people who come to play to produce the money that goes free to those charities. The second part of this would ask for a report by November 1st on the procedures to identify problem gamers who wager and to contact them offering treatment information. And this is something also that is generally within the purview of the Lottery Enforcement Division. And I would ask that at least this get added on. Thank you.
Any further comments on the amendment 548H? Representative Bromley.
Just want to remind everybody that in the bill itself, there's a provision that says each licensee must have a responsible gaming plan. So that kind of touches on some of what Representative Almy is talking about. So I'm going to be voting no on this amendment. Thank you.
Any further questions or comments on the amendment?
If I could respond.
Representative Almy.
Thank you. The income of these operators depends on their having people gamble as much in those machines as possible. And that they are solely responsible for identifying with no oversight on the people that are gambling as much as possible is very difficult.
Representative Doucette.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too am respectfully voting no on this. As it stands, each charitable gaming room must submit a responsible gaming plan under RSA 284:22B, Roman numeral 3-1. It's in place.
Any further questions or comments on Amendment 548H? Seeing none, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Amendment 0548H to HB 626. Let's begin the roll call with Representative Abrami.
No.
Representative McDonald.
No.
Representative Ullery.
No.
Ober.
No.
The clerk Burstein votes no. Doucette.
No.
Elliott.
No.
Janigian.
No.
Nunez.
No.
Baxter.
No.
Spilsbury.
No.
Tudor.
No.
Almy.
Yes.
Ames.
Yes.
Southworth.
Yes.
Malloy.
Yes.
Schamberg.
Representative Schamberg votes yes.
Tucker.
Yes.
Gomarlo.
No.
Loftman. Representative Loftman not voting. Gorg.
No.
Hacken Phillips. Not voting. Let me one more time. Hacken Phillips. Representative Murphy
Yes.
and Chairman Major.
No.
Mr. Chair, the amendment fails by a vote of 15 no and 7 yes.
The vote on Amendment 548H fails because the vote was 15 noes and 7 yes. So any more amendments? Any further discussion on the bill with a motion about to pass?
Chairman, if I may speak to my motion briefly.
Representative Doucette.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The ought to pass motion on House Bill 626. This is not a request to approve a new form of gaming in our state. It's to take an existing form that has been legal in the state since the 1930s, and it brings us into the 21st century by allowing it to function electronically. Our state lottery, which has brought in hundreds of millions of dollars for education since the first lottery-based parimutuel bet was placed here in my town at Rockingham Park in Salem, New Hampshire on September 14th, 1964. This bill allows the opportunity for us to once again bet on that race for education and for the charities. New Hampshire was the first in the nation to create the lottery. Although historic racing is prevalent in other states, let New Hampshire lead the way to utilize it for the benefit of charities in the state and education through this adaptive reuse of parimutuel wagering in New Hampshire. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative Doucette. Any other comments? Seeing none, I'll ask the clerk to call the vote ought to pass on House Bill 626-FN.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let's begin the roll call vote with Representative Abrami.
Yes.
Representative McDonald,
Yes.
Ulrey,
Yes.
Ober,
Yes.
Clerk Burstein votes yes. Doucette,
Yes.
Elliott,
Yes.
Janigian, Representative Janigian stepped out, so no vote. Nunes,
Yes.
Baxter,
Yes.
Spilsbury,
Yes.
Tudor,
Yes.
Almy,
No.
Ames,
No.
Southworth,
No.
Malloy,
No.
Schamberg,
Representative Schamberg votes yes.
Tucker,
Yes.
Gomarlo,
Yes.
Representative Loftman is a no vote. Representative Gord is a not voting. Representative Gord,
Yes.
Representative Hacken Phillips. Representative Hacken Phillips is not voting. Representative Murphy,
No.
Chairman Major.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, the motion of ought to pass carries by a vote of 16 yes, 5 no votes.
The vote being 16 yes and 5 no, the motion of
Could I ask how that,
House Bill 626-FN.
that's 21.
3 members did not vote.
Janigan's out of the room.
Yeah, Janigian,
Review.
Loftman, and Hacken Phillips did not cast votes.
Are you all set, Representative Almy?
My community isn't, but we're finished.
All right. House Bill 626. What I want to do now is to go to House Bill 15. House Bill 15-FN, relative to including under the meals and rooms tax facilitators of internet transactions of motor vehicle rentals and facilitators of internet transactions of room occupancy. Do I hear a motion on House Bill 15? Then we can discuss it.
I make a motion OTP. Pat.
Representative Bromley makes a motion of OTP on House Bill 15.
I'll second it.
And the second was from Representative Almy.
Mr. Chair.
Hold on 1 second. Okay. Do I hear any discussion or motions for amendments on House Bill 15?
Yeah, can I ask you a question for discussion first?
Representative Baxter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's still an issue. Myself, I've mentioned it, and multiple members have the concern of whether this will create a new tax on travel agent services. And that's why I proposed an amendment to try to alleviate that concern. I know there's some concern about the language of the amendment, but there's been no proposed solution that our caucus or the committee has come to deal with that concern. So I think we need to alleviate that concern before passing the bill without dealing with that concern.
That's why I asked the DRA to be present so that we could have that discussion. If are you going to, we can have that discussion either through a motion for an amendment or just plain go to that discussion. And that has been a concern. So Representative Gamalo, if you would allow second. Carolyn Lear, the DRA. Is he a panelist?
I just promoted her.
Thank you. Now, we can have the discussion on whether this is a new tax or not, and also the discussion on the, what do you call it? Not the facilitator, but the agent. So I'm open up. Any questions from the committee? We have the DRA to be able to answer. So Representative Baxter.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure if the representative from the DRA heard what I just said a few minutes ago about the concern about this being a new tax on travel agent services. So if they can speak to that, I would appreciate that.
Okay. Carolyn Lear, who is the Deputy Commissioner from the DRA, could you speak to that?
Of course, Representative, thank you. Carolyn Lear, Assistant Commissioner at the Department of Revenue. I think what's difficult about this question is that as we've sort of considered this issue over several legislative sessions, we've not ever heard from travel agents. So I had to do a bit of baseline research to answer this question. And what I've sort of found through my own research is that travel agents typically are compensated with a commission paid from the hotel, for example, directly to the travel agent. And the M&R tax is paid as a percentage of the total price paid by the consumer. So in these, what I understand to be the typical travel agent transactions, the commission would not be subject to tax because it's paid by the hotel to the travel agent, not by the consumer to the travel agent. And specifically, I would look to line 16 of the bill, which makes very clear that it's paid by the occupant. If HB 15 is passed as is, we can certainly, when we undertake the rulemaking process for this bill, really flush that out in rules. I think, as I discussed with Representative Major yesterday, our concern with the amendment is whether it's a bit of a blanket exemption if someone uses the term quote unquote travel agent without sort of substantively sussing out what that term means. And do we then sort of let someone say, I'm a travel agent and therefore I'm carte blanche, not obligated to collect. So I understand the concern absolutely with making sure travel agents are not unintentionally looped in. I do think we can handle that issue in rules.
Well, why not just amend or change the language slightly of my amendment, or someone else could propose an amendment essentially saying this, that travel agent services won't be taxed, but you can't add a component of your business that's a travel service agency to exempt the entirety of your businesses. I feel like it's fairly simple. The issue is if we don't have the amendment in there, there's still the original concern which hasn't been dealt with yet. And I respect what you're saying, that it could be worked out, but I feel like it's a better approach to work it out before we ought to pass the bill than to leave it till later.
So certainly that would be, I don't have a position on that. I think that would be a workable solution as well to deal with it in the bill. I would still say that I do think we would still need to, in rules, substantively define what the term travel agent means, so that you can't just, call yourself a travel agent and therefore you are one. We need to sort of define that term to distinguish a travel agent from a platform, for example. But we could certainly do that in rules as well.
Yeah, and I guess that's kind of what I'm getting to is the amendment. It's not necessarily the amendment that's the issue, it's just making sure in rules that the amendment is clarified to not allow people to call themselves a travel agent when they're not. But as long as that's worked out in rules, then would you say the amendment would work as intended?
I guess he's asking you, do we need the amendment?
Well, what I'm asking you is, as long as rules makes it clear that you can't just call yourself a travel agent when you're not, then wouldn't the amendment work as intended to make sure that travel agents aren't being taxed, which isn't the intent of anyone that created this bill, without creating a new loophole? Just make sure that's clear in rules that you can't just call yourself a travel agent.
So I'm comfortable in saying that the definition of travel agent would fall within our rulemaking authority. I think the question I have based on the language of the amendment is whether the amendment language is clear enough that an operator who has, for example, 1% of their line of business being a travel agent business and the other 99% attributable to something where they would be responsible for collecting and remitting the tax, that the 1% doesn't affect the other 99%.
And is it your belief that through the rules process that we couldn't make it clear that the 99% is being taxed, as is the case now, and the 1% is not?
I fear that the amendment as written could be interpreted to scoop in the 99% because it says the term shall not apply to the services of a person, firm, corporation, or partnership providing travel agent services, but doesn't limit that phrase to the portion of their business that constitutes being a travel agent.
I hear what you're saying about that fear, and I guess what I'm really trying to hammer down is, do you not think that fear can be eliminated through the rules process? I want to get a clear answer on your perspective on that.
I'm worried that that the rulemaking committee that reviews our rules will say that we're acting outside of our rulemaking authority or in contradiction to what the statute says.
Okay, so I guess and you can correct me if I'm not understanding you correctly, but you're not sure what would happen, how the rules process would work out based off how the amendment is currently written. Is that correct?
That's correct. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion at this point. We didn't discuss this in caucus. There's still a lot of uncertainty. At this point, I think we should work on the amendment language before to passing this bill further. And if anything, I would make a motion. I'm not saying I'm making a motion right now, but if anything, it should be retained before we pass this, with all the uncertainty about my amendment language and with the travel agent component. And I'm not the only member on the committee that feels this way, Mr. Chair.
Fine. I think we can continue discussing this bill. From what I hear, the representative from the DRA saying is that if the bill is passed as is without the amendment, they could take care of this issue through rules. And then, so it's up to the committee whether they want to proceed with this.
I guess, go ahead, Mr. Chair. I don't want to cut you off if you want to keep going.
No, go ahead.
I guess what the concern is for me is we're hearing, well, we can deal with the issue without amending it in rules, but we think in rules that if we do amend it, we can't change the amendment. So it's kind of like, which one is it? You know, I would rather, if the rules issue is maybe a process, I'd rather just wait and make sure we do it right the first time as a committee before sending it over to rules without it being 100% certain we're going to get the outcome we're looking for.
And we need to answer a question. Do we get this over to the Senate? And with the Senate, they can deal with that issue if we find that we come up with a solution. At this point, the solution is whether we have confidence in the DRA and what they told us that they can handle that in the rules. And I think the committee needs to make up their mind on that. So why don't we hear from some of the committee members representing Yurley?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to ask DRA to elaborate a little bit on the court decision and the restrictions that placed upon their tax collecting ability that was referenced in their letter. Could they do that, sir?
Carolyn?
Thank you for the question, Representative. I'm happy to discuss that briefly. So, as you all know, because you've followed the case throughout the last several years, as these online room sharing specifically platforms became more prominent in the room rental and hotel rental market, New Hampshire, along with every other state in the country, attempted to assert that the M&R tax requires the platform to collect and remit the M&R tax on behalf of the various properties that they represent. That case in New Hampshire went all the way to the New Hampshire Supreme Court, and they said that, excuse me, our statute, which was, drafted at a time when these weren't, or this wasn't a prominent method of renting rooms, didn't capture those platforms as operators. And I think it's important to understand why the state would want to take the position that the platform and not the individual is the operator. So under the M&R tax statute, every person who owns a vacation home or rents out an in-law suite on a temporary basis is required to become licensed and submit monthly returns to the state of New Hampshire and collect the M&R tax on those transactions. That's the case even if someone only rents their room for one night out of the year. They're required to become licensed and collect and remit the M&R tax. So as a sort of administrative convenience for us as well as the individual operators, we do think that it's certainly a more efficient method of tax collection for us to license and expect the platforms to collect rather than each individual homeowner. It results in thousands of less M&R tax returns each month. Were we to audit, we would audit the platform rather than each individual property owner. And because the platform is actually the entity that assesses the tax and collects the money from the consumer, we actually think it's the platform who's properly responsible for that collection and remission and audit compliance activity. Does that answer your question, Representative?
Not entirely. And the question that was raised by Representative Baxter, you wanted to make sure that this was not a new tax and that the clarification as to who was going to pay the tax. Does that court ruling apply to the question that Representative Baxter raised?
Not directly. I could look back and get you any comments that the court made on the issue of fees generally, but the court never really had to get to that question because they ended their analysis really at the level of the operator is not, the platform is not an operator, and that sort of ends the inquiry. But I could look back and see if there's any, what I would call dicta about the fee portion. But I think in this instance, I think the statute is very clear that the tax applies to the amount of money paid by the consumer to rent the room. So as to the travel agent question, so long as we're talking about sort of the typical transaction as I understand it, the travel agent's fee, which generally is not paid by the consumer, is never going to be captured by the M&R tax, which is why I'm sort of comfortable saying we can deal with that issue in rule. I think it becomes murkier simply because of the wording of the amendment itself.
A follow-up, Mr. Chair.
Follow-up.
Thank you, Ms. Blair. From what you just said, it seems as though DRA is very clear that this doesn't apply to the agent in any case because of the wording in the existing law and the restrictions that were placed on the agency's tax collection ability by the decision in a broad sense, not in a narrow sense, but in a broad sense, applying it to the individual paying the tax. Have I got that more or less correct?
Yes, Representative. I believe you have that correctly.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Representative Worley, for the question. That was very enlightening. Representative Almy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that there is a difficulty in that many members, actually not just new members, don't understand the jail car process and the fact that if their attorneys feel that something is that is put forward by the agency does not represent the intent of the legislators, they impose fairly heavy sanctions that we put in place because agencies were getting out of control about 20 years ago. So I think that we really should solve this ourselves rather than go back, let it go to the Senate and have the same argument. I think that it ought to be fairly easy to put an amendment in that was fashioned between the DRA and Representative Baxter that says that this does not apply to services provided as a travel agent, which are not on the rentals of rooms or cars, and then leave it to the DRA in rules to specify, okay, this is a travel agent service, something of that nature, and that ought to be able to be produced by tomorrow, in my opinion. Thank you.
Okay, Representative Gore.
Thank you. So I've been in the hospitality industry for 30 years, and I have an example that might be helpful. So back in the day when Starwood was a hotel brand before it became a Marriott, we used to have a program where anyone could get money back on a particular event. It was built into the contract, and at one point it actually was changed. So only real estate agents, I'm not real estate, I apologize, travel agents could get that particular, it's not a kickback, but it is an extra bonus to them to book at a particular hotel. And the way that we did it was that the travel agent had to provide their there's a travel agent network. It's an international airline travel network. It's IATAN. And they also have an American Society for Travel Agents, ASTA. We required them to put their membership number in there, and that kind of bypassed, it made them legitimate travel agents, right? So those who had that as a business and were part of these membership organizations. And I don't know if that's helpful to Representative Baxter or if it'd be helpful to DRA, but that might be a way to help clarify in rules or in any amendment. So I just wanted to add this is common in the hospitality industry, and that's kind of how they get around this.
Okay, Representative Romney.
All I can say is, wow. I'm ready to vote on this the way it is, but I'll respect others that still have or that are uncomfortable and feel that we need an amendment. As long as someone's willing to put the energy in to get the amendment going, I think we can handle the whole issue in rules. I don't see a big deal here, but if someone wants to take another crack at an amendment, let's go do it. And as Representative Alme said, we could probably take this up tomorrow, but you know, Representative Baxter, you did take a crack at an amendment. It sounds like that amendment still needs work. If you're willing to take another crack at that amendment, that's fine with me. But there's going to be a point at which, you know, we're going to run out of time here. Understanding this was the House position last term, meaning the Ways and Means position, I should say, that was the Ways and Means position of the members that were present then. We spent a lot of time on this. I think Representative Malloy had the subcommittee on it. I was a member of it. We spent a lot of time with the DRA on it. And we pretty much went around and around, and we put together what we thought was pretty good legislation. So again, I don't want to be the one saying, you know, whatever. If it sounds like there's still some folks who want to see an amendment, I'm okay with that. I'm not going to be the one to do it, but if we're going to do it, we got to do it soon. Thank you.
Okay, Representative Southwood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I agree mostly with Representative Abrami. I have confidence in DRA's rulemaking procedures. To me, this bill is about fairness. And again, I was around before when a lot of work went into the bill. My only variance from Representative Abrami is I really don't think an amendment is necessary. And I would hope we wouldn't have to spend extra time on an amendment if it really isn't really necessary. So I'd be ready for OTP today. Thank you.
Representative Spilsbury.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I'd like to just go on record now as saying I think the bill addresses the matter adequately. With all respect, I do think that the amendment muddies the water. I don't think an amendment is necessary. I think the rulemaking process will deal with any clarifications. And basically, the bill, I think everyone agrees, addresses the consequences of the litigation dealing with online platforms in the context of rental facilitators. The question of whether travel agent services somehow represents a new tax, I think, again, can be dealt with administratively. It's clear to me that the bill does not create a new tax. And very simply, it's taxing everything that the consumer is required to pay for the purposes of a room or a car. I think the ski lift ticket package thing's already been dealt with. So it really comes down to travel agent commissions. And the fact is that those are done differently by different organizations. Airbnb may do it one way, Booking.com may do it another way. It still comes down, what does the consumer have to pay to book the room or the car? And it doesn't make a difference whether the consumer pays the entire fee to the booking agent, who keeps his commission and turns the rest over to the hotel, or second, whether he pays nothing to the booking agent, which is true of Booking.com, and then pays on arrival, and then the hotel pays a commission separately, which is just a marketing expense, or third, whether he pays the commission to the booker and separately. All three of these I have seen in experience. The outcome's the same in every case. The total that the consumer pays is subject to the room and meals tax. And I think the only thing that boils down to that Representative Baxter is actually asking is also clear. And that is, if the consumer has paid the entire amount to the lodging facility, and the amount includes whatever the lodging facility's expenses are, then there is no question when the lodging facility sends a payment to the booking agent for their services, that is already been in the amount that the consumer paid. It's already been subject to the meals and rooms tax. And we are not proposing in this bill to double tax the transaction that simply transmits the commission. So I'm sorry to go on, but I've sat here listening to the entire discussion in recent sessions, and I think it's there's not a problem here that we need to deal with. I'm ready to vote.
Representative Elliott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill on the 27th of January was contested for over an hour. And at that point, Madam Carolyn Lear stated that litigation in every state has been passed on this type of bill. So it's obviously controversial. I would hope that Representative Baxter might want to complete a clarification amendment and present it to the committee tomorrow when we meet, if that's okay with him. But right now, I think that this bill, even if we pass it, which I'm going to vote yes, is going to fail again. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Representative Tudor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I had some initial concerns with this, but after listening to the DRA, I think I'm comfortable with having them deal with it in rules.
Representative Nunes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm tending to lean to the side to where I think that we might need to work on this methodology a little bit more in statute before it gets handed over to DRA to make a rule. I didn't get a warm and fuzzy feeling from the commissioner. No disrespect there, but I didn't get the warm and fuzzy feeling that the rules committee for the DRA was going to be in favor of a rule that would be adopted by her to take care of the situation that we're talking about in methodology on top of these travel agents. If Representative Baxter could be given an opportunity to clarify that amendment, I think it would actually help the DRA make a better rule. And that's where I stand on that.
Okay, let me ask Representative Baxter if you think you could work with the DRA and come up with an amendment for tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to do that, and I appreciate all the fellow members, Representative Almy as well, that have suggested that. I'm more than happy to do that.
Okay, then I've got one more hand. Representative Almy.
Thank you. I just wanted to point out that we did work on this for 3-4 years, and I don't think it failed on the floor. We just kept studying it, and we were waiting for Wayfair to finish in order to pass it, because it would have been a little hypocritical before. But this is something that that depends a lot on the details of the language. So I hope that Representative Baxter and Ms. Lear will communicate with each other about the difficulties of the language versus what Representative Baxter wants to do. Thank you.
I'm going to ask Representative Bromley and Representative Almy to withdraw their motion. And we'll deal with this tomorrow.
I'll withdraw my second. I would point out we could do this on the 10th also. Thank you.
I know, but Representative Bromley? Is he here?
Mr. Chairman, there's a lot of internet issues today. People keep popping in and out. I'm watching in gallery view, and so it has to do with the wind.
Yeah, hold on. Okay, that was Representative Bromley. His power just went out. His generator come on, and so he's probably take him a little while to come back on. But I asked him if he would withdraw his motion, and he's in order to be able to have Representative Baxter work with Carolyn to come up with a new amendment for tomorrow, and he agrees with that. So if that's the case, anything else we want to talk about on House Bill 15? Not, I recommend that we take a 5 to 8 minute break. Don't turn your video or your audio off. Just mute them. And then we'll be back in 5 to 8 minutes. Thank you. Representative Gamalo,
Yes,
has Pat rejoined us?
I have not seen him yet.
There's a telephone number in,
Oh, maybe that's him.
is that,
365, I don't know his number.
uh,
I would say it is. Brad must have left him, let him in.
okay.
That is his number, Mr. Chair.
Oh, thank you.
Can he hear us and speak? Because he hasn't said anything. Representative Abrami, can you hear us? *6 for unmute, but it looks like you're unmuted anyways. Oh, now you're muted.
Yeah, that is Representative Bromley.
Doesn't sound like he can communicate though.
Yeah. He will not be able to vote though.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Representative Elmy.
you didn't ask about the minority report for HB 626, but I think Representative Ames was willing to do it.
That'll be fine. And when Representative Ames has it completed, if he sends it to me.
What's your timeline, do you think?
You know, it's hard to keep track of the days.
Yeah. It seems to me there's not a big hurry because there's no session scheduled. I think we heard that there might be a couple of days at the end of this month. Yeah, at the end of this month, but that's uncertain.
I would say if you get it by Monday.
Yeah. Sure.
Okay. Now, I'd like to know how many are active on this Zoom call right now. If you're active, would you show your video?
And Representative Abrami, we still haven't heard you yet. So I'm nervous that you can't either hear us or we can't hear you.
Representative Bromley, if you could hear us, was it *9?
Oh, his hand got raised.
Yeah, his hand's up.
Okay.
Isn't *9 to put your hand up? I think *6 is to speak. Pat tried *6.
And it looks like we added Representative Lockman, Alan, for your attendance.
Thank you, Representative Southworth. I'm on it. I know that he was here.
Thank you.
Yeah. So Representative Abrami, it looks like you muted yourself when you did that. I think *9 lowers your hand as well. Or do I have to do it? No, I can do it. Oh, that's not good. You know, I didn't have internet this morning and I came on initially with my phone, but it was via the Zoom app itself. Right. I don't know if you can quickly download that and I even had video, used my camera somehow, so. Maybe Jen or Brad can help.
Yeah, Brad, could you give Representative Bromley a hand on that?
Yep, if he may need to log out of the meeting and log back and call back in again. Sometimes it just doesn't connect right away. So he may just need to hang up and call back in.
Well, I hesitate to say easy, because nothing turns out to be easy. But I'd like to continue with House Bill 210-FN, increasing the exemption under the interest and dividend tax and decreasing the total amount of research development credit against the business taxes. Represented Spilsbury. Representative Spilsbury, you have a motion?
On HB 10?
210-FN.
I didn't, but I believe we should probably hold this bill until we have a better understanding of the HB2 and the governance.
Are you talking about the same bill? Is it 210 or 10?
210.
210.
I'm sorry, I thought we were on.
Yeah, I thought so.
Yes. Thank you very much, Representative Ames. Yes, I would like to make a motion to retain this bill.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a second on retaining House Bill 210?
Representative Tudor, second.
Did I hear Representative Bromley?
Representative Janigian.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just did a check. So they both show on February 24th, they were in Botany.
Okay, Representative Spilsbury, do you want to speak to your motion?
Well, yes, very briefly. Obviously, HB 210 and 568 overlap with two different approaches. I don't think we've given enough consideration to the implications of the R&D and tying them versus going separately. And I think it requires further attention by the committee.
Any further discussion from the committee members? Seeing no hands raised. Representative Bernstein to call the vote on House Bill 210.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The motion is to retain HB 210. Let's begin the voting with Representative Brahmi, who's not, we'll come back to him. How about Representative McDonald? Let's begin the roll call vote with Representative McDonald.
Yes.
O'Leary. Ober.
No.
Clerk votes yes. Representative Doucette.
Yes.
Representative Elliott. You're muted, Representative Elliott.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Representative Janigian.
Yes.
Nunes.
Yes.
Baxter.
Yes.
Spilsbury.
Yes.
Tudor.
Yes.
Almy.
Yes.
Ames.
Yes.
Southworth.
Yes.
Malloy.
Yes.
Schamberg,
Representative Schamberg votes yes.
Tucker,
Yes.
Gomarlo,
Yes.
Laufman,
Yes.
Gorg,
Yes.
Hacken Phillips.
Yes.
Murphy,
Yes.
Chairman of, is Representative Abrami,
A retained motion?
correct.
Yes.
Chairman Major.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, the vote is 23 yes in favor of retaining, 1 opposed. The motion carries.
The vote being 23-1, the motion of retain passes. Thank you. We will go to House Bill 252 and Representative Yurley.
I've moved to retain, sir, and I'd like to speak to my motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have Representative Yurley moves to retain, seconded by Representative. Who did the second?
Southworth.
Southworth.
Is that 252?
House Bill 252.
Thank you.
That's creating a committee to study the creation of a program giving employee tax credit on business taxes in exchange for providing stipends for childcare needs to employees.
Yeah, I showed that they're in Australia.
Mr. Chair, there's additional work that needs to be done on this to see the ramifications that are involved. It needs some additional research, and as such, it deserves to be retained so that we can undertake that work. Thank you.
Any further discussion on the motion to retain House Bill 252? I don't see any hands raised, so the clerk will call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let's begin the roll call vote on the motion to retain House Bill 252. We'll begin with Representative Abrami.
Yes.
Representative McDonald.
Yes.
O'Leary.
Yes.
Ober.
Yes.
The clerk votes yes. Doucette.
Yes.
Elliott. Representative Elliott. There you go.
Yes.
Thank you. Janigian.
Yes.
Nunes.
Yes.
Baxter.
Yes.
Spilsbury.
Yes.
Tudor.
Yes.
Almy.
Yes.
Ames.
Yes.
Southworth.
Yes.
Malloy.
Yes.
Schamberg.
Representative Schamberg votes yes.
Tucker.
Yes.
Gomarlo.
Yes.
Laufman.
Yes.
Gorg.
Yes.
Hacken Phillips.
Yes.
Murphy.
Yes.
Chairman Major.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, the motion to retain carries 24-0.
The vote being 24-0, the motion retained passes. We'll go to House Bill 554-10-local, an act relative to the state.
All right. Hang on a minute.
Could you repeat that number? I don't have it.
It's House Bill 504-FN-local, an act relative to the state education property tax and the low and moderate income homeowners property tax relief program. Representative Spilsbury.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make a motion that we retain this bill for further study. It's a very complicated bill and has implications for communities that I don't think have been fully discussed yet.
I'd like to second that. Representative Ames.
Ames. Motion on House Bill 504 is to retain by Representative Spilsbury, seconded by Representative Ames. Further discussion? Any further discussion on 504? Seeing none, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll on the motion to retain.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let's begin the voting on HB 504 with Representative Abrami.
Yes, yes.
Representative McDonald,
Yes.
O'Leary,
Yes.
Ober,
Yes.
Burstein, the clerk votes yes. Doucette,
Yes.
Elliott,
Yes.
Janigian,
Yes.
Nunes,
Yes.
Baxter,
Yes.
Pillsbury,
Yes.
Tudor,
Yes.
Almy,
Yes.
Ames,
Yes.
Southworth. Representative Southworth. I'm going to put Representative Southworth down as not voting. Representative Malloy.
Yes.
Yes, sorry about that. I was muted.
No problem. Thank you. Southworth votes yes. Malloy voted yes. Representative Schamberg.
Yes.
Tucker.
Yes.
Gomarlo.
Yes.
Loffman.
Yes.
Gorg.
Yes.
Hacken Phillips.
Yes.
Murphy.
Yes.
Chairman Major.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, the motion to retain HB 504 passes 24-0.
The vote being 24-0 on retaining, motion passes. We'll go to House Bill 568-FN-A, an act increasing exemptions to the interest and dividend tax and repealing the tax in 2025. Representative Bromley.
Make a motion to retain.
Representative Bromley makes the motion to retain. Do we have a second?
Chair, the clerk will second that. Burstein.
Representative Burstein seconded the motion to retain. Any discussion on the motion to retain on House Bill 568? Any discussion on House Bill 568? See no hands raised, so if the clerk will call the roll on the motion to retain on 568.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let's begin the voting with Representative Abrami.
Yes.
McDonald.
Yes.
O'Leary.
Yes.
Ober.
Yes.
Burstein votes yes. Doucette.
Yes.
Elliott.
Yes.
Yanigian.
Yes.
As of last
Nunes.
week, there was nothing, as far as like where they were located.
One
So
more
I just
time.
connected it. I did a
Nunes.
tracking this
Nunes
morning.
votes yes. There's somebody talking in the background.
And it shows.
Representative
both
Schamberg.
packages arrived in Botany, Australia on June
Representative
24th.
Schamberg, hit mute and thank you. Representative Baxter.
Yes.
Spilsbury.
Yes.
Tudor. One more time, Representative Tudor.
Representative Tudor, you're muted.
I think he might be frozen too. We'll come back to Representative Tudor. Let's proceed to Representative Almy.
Yes, I think Representative Tudor has been being represented by a video, a non-video.
Representative Tudor, are you back online?
I think so. My vote is yes.
Thank you, sir. Representative Ames.
Yes.
Southworth. Representative Southworth. We'll come back. Representative Malloy.
Yes.
Schamberg,
Representative Schamberg votes yes.
Tucker,
Yes.
Gomarlo,
Yes.
Laufman,
Yes.
Gorg,
Yes.
Hacken Phillips,
Yes.
Murphy,
Yes.
Representative Southworth, are you back with us? I'm going to put Representative Southworth as not voting.
Here he is.
Oh, you got in just under the gun.
I know.
Representative Chairman Major.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, the motion to retain HB 568 passes 24-0.
Mr. Chairman, if I might.
Yeah, go ahead. Because
Just as a reminder, I know there's technical difficulties today, but people have to be on video to take a vote.
Yeah.
And Representative Southworth has not been on video for the last 2 votes.
Is now.
I think that was also true of another representative.
Okay.
No, we should be, but it has been true of several people, but I agree we should be seen.
You're going to have to help me out because I'm trying to write at the same time. And I can't watch.
I'll watch it, okay? Representative Major, I'll watch for that.
Thank you.
I believe Representative Tudor has been showing a picture, not himself.
No, he hasn't. It's been him.
It hasn't moved.
Well, maybe he's frozen.
He's got horrible
There he
connection.
is. Just move.
Everybody's got problems today.
Just a really slow connection he has.
Oh, God.
Okay. Vote being 24-0, the motion to retain passes on House Bill 568. Thank you. Now we have 2 bills left on the DRA group. That's House Bill 10, and House Bill 15, and we'll talk about those tomorrow. Now we'll go to the non-DRA bills. Which I guess we're gonna have a loud and clear vote on this thing. The first is CACR 1, relating to taxes, providing that an income tax on earned personal income shall be prohibited. And who wants to make a motion on that?
Yeah, Representative Brahmi makes a motion on OTP on CACR 1.
Representative Bromley makes a motion of OTP on CACR 1, seconded by
Burstein will second that.
the motion is ought to pass by Representative Bromley, second by Representative Bernstein on CACR 1. So speak on your motion, Representative Bromley.
Real quick, my position is let the people speak.
Any further questions on CACR 1, Representative?
Yeah, I have a comment.
Representative Ames.
Yeah. Just to say that I will be voting against this, and I believe that the existing provisions in the Constitution provide clear and appropriate guidance to all questions of taxation. They've worked well with some modifications over the years for the last 2+ centuries, and I see no reason to intrude on that set of provisions. I'd also note that a prohibition on one object of taxation, earned personal income, raises questions as to its scope. We have a tax right now, business property business profits tax that applies to sole proprietors. We also have a business enterprise tax that targets salaries as a core part of the formula. And so there's ambiguities as well. So I think this proposal is not ready and should not be put forward to the general population as a constitutional amendment.
Any further discussion on CACR 1? Any further discussion on CACR 1? Seeing none, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll on the motion about to pass.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let's begin the roll call vote for the OTP motion on CACR 1. We'll begin with Representative Abrami.
Yes.
Representative McDonald.
Yes.
Ulrich.
Yes.
Ober.
Yes.
Clerk Burstein votes yes. Doucette.
Yes.
Elliott.
Yes.
Janigian.
Yes.
Nunes.
Yes.
Baxter.
Yes.
Pillsbury.
Yes.
Tudor.
Yes.
Almy.
No.
Ames.
No.
Southworth.
No.
Malloy. Representative Malloy, please turn on your video.
I
We'll come
think he's
back.
got a call.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to put, we'll come back to Malloy before I put him down as a no vote. Representative Schamberg.
Representative Schamberg votes no.
Tucker.
No.
Gomarlo.
No.
Loftman.
No.
Gorg.
No.
Hacken Phillips.
No.
Murphy.
No.
Representative Dennis Malloy. I'm going to put down as a no, as not voting. Chairman Major.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, the motion of ought to pass carries by a vote of 13 to 10.
Out of committee, all we need is a majority, right? CACR.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
correct.
Okay, then the vote being 13 to 10, the motion of ought to pass passes.
Mr. Chair, it might be helpful to make clear what the rule will be on the floor. It's a majority coming out of the committee, but maybe you could inform the committee of what happens on the floor.
On the floor, it takes, I believe, 60% to pass on the floor.
60% of
the, I think it's the full house.
Those present.
Just those present?
Don't quote me on that.
Yeah, I was going to look it up. I didn't get around to it, so I'm not actually sure.
60% anyway, but it could be the present or the house. And the way we're split, I don't think it's going to pass.
We're just going to do a PI. We're only going to do a PI on our side.
Yeah.
There's not going to be a speech on our side.
I'll do a PI on the other side.
Okay.
I will. You know, I can't speak for the general population. Who knows who might speak up, but that would be the plan.
Yeah.
Just two PIs, we get it done quick. Thank you.
Is there going to be a minority report?
Yes.
Okay. So there'll be a majority and a minority report, and hopefully there'll just be PIs on the floor.
Yeah, and I'll do the PIs. I mean, the reports. The report.
All right. CAC2, almost like CACR1, but it's relating to taxes, providing that any broad-based sales tax should be prohibited. Representative Bernstein.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move OTP on CACR2.
And seconded by?
I will second that, Mr. Chair.
Who was that?
Doucette, second.
Okay. The motion pass has been made by Representative Bernstein, second by Representative Doucette. Representative Bernstein, you want to say anything?
Sure, just very briefly, similar to the last vote, this simply affords the people an opportunity to vote. So by casting a yes vote and supporting the motion to pass this, you're not prohibiting a tax. All you're doing is giving the people a chance to speak. Therefore, I will be voting yes on this bill.
Representative Ames.
Yes, thank you. And ditto on the sufficiency of the existing constitutional provisions to what I said on the previous CACR, and also ditto to the ambiguity in the targeted source of income or the target that would be prohibited. With this prohibition would preclude from taxation, where a broad-based sales tax in this case is a term that different people have defined differently in different settings. The Tax Foundation in particular has identified a sales tax that has significant exemptions for products that are not subject to it as not broad-based. So what is, what isn't, I don't know. But those are my 2 points with regard to this proposal.
Representative Almy.
Thank you. I just wanted to point out, we have a long history in this state of not legislating by referendum, which just look at California, what a mess it made of itself by doing that. And these 2 proposals would both, if they were passed by the population, make it almost certain that at some future date in our state would be up against a wall so badly that we would end up either with anarchy or we would end up with a major revolution of some kind. So we don't know what the economy is going to look like in the future. We don't know what can be taxed in order to pay for the government of this state. And there is no way we can know what's going to happen 50 years from now, 100 years from now. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Almy. Anybody else want to make a comment on the motion of ought to pass on CACR 2? I see no hands up, so I'll ask the clerk to call the roll on ought to pass on CACR 2.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let's begin the roll call vote on CACR 2. The motion is ought to pass. Representative Patrick Abrami.
Yes.
Representative McDonald.
Yes.
Representative Ullery.
Yes.
Representative Ober.
Yes.
The clerk votes yes. Representative Doucette.
Yes.
Elliott.
Yes.
Janigian.
Yes.
Nunes.
Yes.
Baxter.
Yes.
Pillsbury.
Yes.
Tudor.
Yes.
Almy.
No.
Ames.
No.
Southworth.
No.
Malloy. Representative Schamberg.
No.
Representative Tucker.
No.
Gomarlo.
No.
Loftman.
No.
Gord.
No.
Hacken Phillips.
No.
Murphy.
No.
Chairman Major.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, the motion of ought to pass carries 13-10.
The motion of ought to pass on CACR 2 passes with a vote of 13-10.
And we'll put that on the consent calendar.
And remember, just a PI on this thing. Okay, the next is,
Minority report. Who's doing a minority report?
Yeah, I'm gonna do that. And again, I think by Monday, is that right, Representative Major?
yes, that'd be fine. The next bill is House Bill 346. Hold on 1 second. I have to get the bill itself. An act relative to the funding source for the Domestic Violence Program Fund.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, what was that? What was that again?
House Bill 346, relative to the funding source for Domestic Violence Program Fund.
Thank you, sir.
I need a motion for that.
Representative Brahmi here. Part of me wants to ITL this, but I guess we'll retain it.
So
motion to retain.
He makes a motion to retain House Bill 346.
Second, Representative Ober.
And Representative Ober seconds it. You want to speak to your motion, Representative Abrani?
Well, Representative Edwards came in with the bill, but then he also came in with an amendment. And the amendment basically took the money from domestic violence fund and put it into the general fund. And then he was going to turn around and somehow fund domestic violence because he's one of the chairs of finance. And I'm sitting here going, wow, that's all nice, but then you don't need this bill. If you think you can do it all on your own, go ahead. And besides, the point is that we'd still have to, even if we pass something, would have to go to the Senate. And by that point, the budget would have been done, and this is all moot. So again, my druthers is to ITL it, but I'm retaining it just to minimize the amount of bills that we have to deal with on the floor.
Okay, Representative Almy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is it my understanding that if we retain it and it is not otherwise solved, that Representative Edwards had said that he was going to come back next year if we passed this, and with a permanent funding source, which his solution is not. It is only for this term if it passed the Senate and the governor. Would we be retaining it in order to listen to his next suggestion in the fall?
I would say yes, but I'm not hopeful we're going to hear something that we could act on, but it could be. But we're just retaining it just so that, to be honest with you, we're retaining it so that we don't have to deal with it as a full house in the next session, because we're trying to minimize the number of bills we have to deal with on the floor.
Any further discussion? Representative Southworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Although I support ITL, sorry, I think this is a good compromise, and really we don't need to rush it this year. Thank you.
Any further discussion on House Bill 346? Seeing none, I'm going to ask the clerk to call the vote on House Bill 346, which the motion is to retain.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let's begin the roll call vote on HB 346 with Representative Abrami.
Yes.
Representative McDonald.
Yes.
Oglery.
Yes.
Ober.
Yes.
Burstein, the clerk votes yes. Doucette.
Yes.
Elliott.
Yes.
Janigian.
Yes.
Nunes.
Yes.
Baxter.
Yes.
Pillsbury.
Yes.
Tudor.
Yes.
Almy.
Yes.
Ames.
Yes.
Southworth.
Yes.
Malloy.
Yes.
Schamberg.
Yes.
Tucker.
Yes.
Omarlo.
Yes.
Loftman.
Yes.
Gorg.
Yes.
Hacken Phillips.
Yes.
Murphy.
Yes.
Chairman Major.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, the retained motion passes 24-0.
Oh, vote of 24-0 on the motion to retain, it passes on House Bill 346. Next is House Bill 400, an act relative to the collection of sales taxes of foreign jurisdiction by New Hampshire businesses. Representative Tudor.
Representative Tudor makes a motion to retain HB 400.
Representative Tudor makes a motion to retain on House Bill 400, seconded by
I'll second it.
Abrami.
Yep.
Representative Tudor, you speak to your motion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. HB 400 needs additional work to find out whether anyone has actually registered with the state to collect this tax. So we'd like to delay it so that we can get the AJ in to brief us on what's been happening.
Thank you. Representative Ames.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I'll vote for retain, but I must say that it doesn't seem necessary to retain this bill when it's clearly not needed. And I would think it would be better to dispose of it. But yes, we can all learn from information provided by the Attorney General's office on what's happening. And so I see that as a positive. I'll be voting for retention.
Thank you. Representative Almy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also will vote for retain because we have new members who haven't been through what we went through last term. However, we know that it is extremely difficult to get the Attorney General's office to show up to talk with us. We had the governor's legal counsel last time. I'm not sure whether he still is the governor's legal counsel. I haven't heard his name for quite a while. And it was his job to be a real liaison, but there is the Attorney General's office itself has always been difficult, sometimes totally outside their own control because they had court cases when we wanted them to show up. So I do hope that we can get somebody. I'm not sure who the governor's legal counsel is now, but maybe it would be useful to try to go after that person too. If it's for Mela, that would be terrific. Thank you.
And I do have a contact over there, and I plan on bringing him into the committee. Representative Abrami.
I just wanted to comment that Representative Ames, I agree with you 100%. I have my druthers. I just ITL this as well. We'd spent a lot of time on this issue. We've built a nice fence around the issue, and it seems to be holding. Although we're hearing some rumblings of some people, some states trying to start collecting, but minimal stories, minimal. But retaining it, it gives us a vehicle to study it I think we need to address the issue. We haven't, it's been a couple of years now, so might as well, let's study it. Let's study where we're at, what's going on with the AG. I know the Department of Revenue is also interested in being involved in this as well, in this discussion. So, thank you.
Any further discussion? I don't see any, so I'm going to ask the clerk to call the vote on House Bill 400.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let's begin the roll call vote on HB 400. The motion is to retain. Representative Abrami.
Yes. Yes.
McDonald.
Yes.
Ulrich.
Yes.
Ober.
Yes.
Burstein votes yes. Doucette.
Yes.
Elliott.
Yes.
Janigian.
Yes.
Nunes.
Yes.
Baxter.
Yes.
Spilsbury.
Yes.
Tudor.
Yes.
Almy.
Yes.
Ames.
Yes.
Southworth.
Yes.
Malloy.
Yes.
Schamberg.
Representative Schamberg votes yes.
Tucker.
Yes.
Go Marlowe. One more time,
Jenny?
Representative.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Loftman.
Yes.
Scored.
Yes.
Hacken Phillips.
Yes.
Murphy.
Yes.
Chairman Major.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, the motion carries 24-0.
With the vote being 24-0 on retaining, the motion passes. On House Bill 400. Next is House Bill 621-FN, an act allowing Register of Deeds to retain a portion of the Land and Community Heritage Investment Program surcharge. Representative Janigian.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make a motion to retain House Bill 621 FN.
And Representative Schamberg would like to second that motion.
The motion to retain has been made by Representative Janigian, seconded by Representative
Schamberg. Thank you.
Representative Janigian.
Yes, we heard some testimony on this bill. I think we still need to study this further. There's concern about taking 10% out of the current LCHIP. And, we just need to study this further to make sure that we understand the implications and can make a good decision on this bill.
Any further discussion on House Bill 621? Representative Bromley.
It should also be stated that there are many counties that are actually making good faith efforts at doing their restoration, including Rockingham County. Rockingham spends $90,000 on the restoration of records every year. It spends another $60,000 on the restoration of their CD-ROMs. So, most registrars of deed are a profit center for most counties. They do generate revenues, and there should be money there to restore the records. But with that, I'll vote for retention.
Any further? Representative Almy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have heard from the registers of deeds that the only county which is not doing what they are mandated to do in the statutes to repair their records is Carroll County, which is the one behind this bill. And in fact, one county, Coas, does not get enough money out of the Register of Deeds, but is still appropriating money from other sources to pay for preserving their records. So I think that we ought to take a look at what is happening with the funding source that was specified in our statutes and how it's being used in the different counties. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Alme. Anybody else wish to comment on House Bill 621? Motion of retaining. I don't see it. So if the clerk will call the vote on House Bill 621, the motion to retain.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let's begin the roll call vote on HB 621 with Representative Abrami.
Yes.
McDonald,
Yes.
Ulrey,
Yes.
Ober,
Yes.
Burstein votes yes. Doucette,
Yes.
Elliott,
Yes.
Janigian,
Yes.
Nunes,
Yes.
Baxter,
Yes.
Spilsbury,
Yes.
Tudor,
Yes.
Alme,
Yes.
Ames,
Yes.
Southworth,
Yes.
Malloy,
Yes.
Schamberg,
Representative Shamberg votes yes.
Tucker,
Yes.
Gomarlo,
Yes.
Loftman,
Yes.
Gorg,
Yes.
Hacken Phillips,
Yes.
Murphy,
Yes.
Chairman Major.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, the motion to retain HB 621 carries 24-0.
With a vote 24-0 on the motion to retain the motion. Out of the 12, the only ones that we have to address tomorrow is House Bill 10 and House Bill 15. And on House Bill 15, Representative Baxter will work with the DRA to come up with an amendment to clarify that. And then we'll do a regular work session on House Bill 10 tomorrow. So we have those two bills to attend to tomorrow. Any further questions or comments? We made good progress. So every bill, you know, there's a number of bills that we retain that probably should have been ITL'd, but every bill that goes to the floor for ITL is a potential good hour debate. And you know what happened this past session. There's 35 bills we didn't get to. So I think personally, I think we made the right decision on how to handle these things. So we could get our work done. Anything else? Then if not, we're through for the rest of the day. And we'll be back tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock to deal with House Bill 10 and House Bill 15. I want to remind you that I sent out an email that a request from the Finance Committee, Representative Weiler and Representative Ober, and it identifies those parts of HB2 that will affect the revenues. They've been identified. So once HB2 available, it should be available online. You need to take a look at that, because when we meet on the 10th, I want to go over all these. Because actually, I'd like to get some feedback to the Finance Committee prior to that, if I could, so it'll help them do their job. And then we have 5 bills that we're the second committee on, which we'll deal with on the 10th of this month. Any questions?
Yeah, Mr. Chair,
Yes.
am I right in thinking that HB2 has not shown up yet?
It hadn't as of late yesterday afternoon. I haven't checked it this morning. We obviously haven't had much time.
Yeah. Okay.
But
I didn't know how to read that note.
Mine, I hope. Representative Tucker, did you say something?
Yeah, I don't think I understood that note that I got. Maybe you could send it again, or for some reason it didn't, I didn't have a clue what it meant.
Oh, I will give you a call, Representative Tucker, and go over it with you.
Okay.
Essentially, on House Bill 2, there's 169 pages. And then the Finance Committee identified those items in those pages that they would want input from the Ways and Means Committee. So if we take that note that I sent you with those page numbers and look at the note, and it gives the items, then that's what you want to look up at.
Okay, I'll do that. Thank you.
You have to go to the RSAs to see what they're modifying on the RSAs. And then we've got to come up with what it means to them. But
I
that's
would just add that I'm sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
Go ahead.
Add that the note, I think it was Representative Ober who said something about the references. They're using a draft HB2 that they have, and she said that she thought that the official HB2 would have similar pagination and maybe it's more importantly section numbers, but watch for that because they may not coincide.
Mr. Chairman, I've had my hand up a bit.
Representative Almy.
Thank you. When we've done this before, and I don't know if we could get it now, but either have Gen 4 or Chris Shea extract out the sections of HB2 that we are supposed to look at. And then I have a question, and then send them to us. I have a question about whether if we look at the front pages that are the index of HB2, which have no page number references, and you can't search by section number, then can we, if we find something that we think deals with a dedicated fund that we should have done something about or affects the tax revenue, could we add that to the list or not?
Oh, yes. Matter of fact, one of my assignments this week, and I'll probably start this afternoon because we're not meeting this afternoon, is to take and pull out from HB2 and put it into one document, those areas that they want us to look at. And then, start looking at HB2 and see what other areas they didn't identify that we should be looking at. And I'll add that to the document, but I'll get the first document out right away.
Thank you, but we have to wait till they've given us the official one with its own pagination. Can I offer suggestions if I do the same thing once it's there? Thank you.
Not only you, but any member of the committee. Anything else? And then, once we get that settled, March is a big month for revenues. And come probably around the 25th or so, we'll have a good idea, I hope, maybe the 28th or 29th. And then we need to start looking at what's happening and is that going to affect the projections that we have put in. So we really need to look at those things. And then we'll have to do the same thing in April. And not only that, watch the Wall Street Journal, Financial Times, Economist, anything that gives you a clue. It's going to affect us in New Hampshire. And let's look into those things. We've got 24 set of eyes and ears Let's use them all. All right. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Norman.
Thank you.
Monitor the Ways and Means Committee.
See you tomorrow.
Have a good day, everybody.
Hi, Bob.
Hey, are you busy?
I'm just breaking up from our